Welcome to season 5 of What's the Juice podcast. I cannot believe that it's been 5 years of recording this show. And I have some really exciting news for those of you who are OGs and have been listening to season 1 and love season 1 the most like me, because I'm making some changes this time around that are hopefully going to take us back to our roots of how and why we made the show. So before we get into this episode, just a general update so you guys can hear a little bit from me and know where my heart is at with how I'm going about the show this time around. I remember before we recorded season 1, I was so excited. I had these fresh eyes for the show, and I was so hungry to meet different guests that were sort of these like hole-in-the-wall unknown practitioners that didn't have a big social media following and just had some really interesting, unique clinical gems to share with us, and who were so immersed in their field that they could really be of service, whether it was through their, again, clinical knowledge and health information or just their unique philosophy of the world. And I think season 1 was filled with so many of these fascinating guests. And it was filmed in person. It was before the pandemic, and I got to record almost every single episode face-to-face, heart-to-heart, and that makes a huge difference in conversations. And then COVID happened, and so many things were out of my control, and we had to start recording remotely. And I think that took away some of the joy of making the podcast, because things were just these scheduled recordings. I didn't get to meet the person face to face. There wasn't that much of connection and excitement as we had in season 1. And so I realized that if I was going to keep doing the show, I needed to do it with my whole chest. Like I needed to do it with my heart, and I needed to go back to putting the same love and intention and obsession that I put in season 1. And so I decided to produce this season entirely on my own, on the production end. I am the producer now. And I decided to also record each and every one of these episodes face-to-face. So I spent a lot of time this year, and I'm continuing to spend time traveling to Los Angeles, to Austin, Texas, to New York, to all of these different places where unique and knowledgeable guests live and are based, so that I can meet them face to face and have the right conversation that will be of maximum value to you guys. This also means that you'll be able to watch these episodes on YouTube, which is fantastic. You'll be able to see our faces and see humans on the screen. I think a lot of people prefer watching episodes on YouTube, so that's exciting. We'll put our YouTube link in the show notes. And another thing is that when I started the show, we did it with 0 ads, and I always preferred it that way. And then it got really expensive to make a podcast because there's a lot of time and money and people involved. And thank goodness, because people are what make this show so wonderful. But that means that it's a huge extra cost and burden on my business, which is Organic Olivia, my herbal formulas. So last season, we toyed around with doing ads for companies that I love and felt aligned with. And even though I was aligned with them, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel good. And I love introducing you guys to brands that I really like and people who make products that I don't make. Like sharing about my air purifier was fabulous because I love using an air purifier and it's really helped my life. But at the same time, it felt out of place to be advertising before releasing these episodes that are so close to my heart and my soul and that are meant to just be for the people. And so while those advertisements did really help us to cover costs of the show, I just don't feel it in my heart to keep doing them. So I just want to let you guys know that my company, Organic Olivia, my line of herbal formulas, will be covering 100% of the costs this season, which means that there will be no ads. And what I'll do is I'll just mention some herbal formulas that I'm loving or that I'm working on or that are relevant to the goal of the episode. And I'll probably just give you guys some discounts at the top of the show for whatever formula is appropriate for that topic as a thank you for being a listener. And if you guys want to support the show monetarily and help us to cover the costs that go into everything, you can shop on organicolivia.com and I will solely be funding it. It just feels better to be able to speak to you guys about products that I make and have full control over, and something that is really deeply true and authentic to me because it's the formulas that I always wished I had for myself that I trust obviously implicitly and use for family and friends. So that's obviously organicolivia.com. I'll put that in the show notes and I'll give you guys discounts throughout the season. And then the other change that I'm making is that instead of having our usual short season, we're going to have as long of a season as we possibly can, perhaps even in perpetuity. I really like the concept of having a show run year round, and I couldn't do it before because I just didn't have the bandwidth, because I was also creating content for social media, running my business, doing all of these different things and running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I've done some really deep soul searching the last few months. I shared a little bit on Instagram about where my head is at, but I realized that I don't want to make my impact in this life by just posting on social media and on Instagram forever. I think I have so much deeper of an impact to make. And part of the way I feel I can make that impact is through the podcast. It's so much more valuable to have true, nuanced conversations and be in relationship with folks that you can then be in relationship with and work with as your practitioners. And my goal essentially going forward is to platform the people that I trust and want you to work with to further your health, because I think that I can only get you so far in your health by posting on Instagram and being a public figure influencer and putting my time into short form content for the algorithm that gets lost and isn't as authentic as a podcast episode where there's true information. So I'm kind of pivoting my life, and after 10 years of posting on the internet almost every day, I'm going to be changing things up and not putting my energy into Instagram, and instead putting my life into this podcast and finding as many guests, making as many relationships with people, again, that I trust for you to make a relationship with, because I can only get you so far with you following me on the internet and seeing what I'm doing or what I'm eating. And that makes it all about me. And at this point in my life and at this point in social media, that just feels icky. It's not about me anymore. And I think sharing my journey up until this point and sharing my life helps you guys maybe see pieces of yourself in me, pieces of your journey, helps you to know you were not alone, gave you some clues and nuggets, and my reflections perhaps helped you guys have your own reflections. And that's amazing. But I know that I'm supposed to do more than just that. And I think I've given all I can give in that sector. And now I want to give you the people who will take you far beyond where I've been able to take you. And so that's the goal with the podcast. I'm hoping to meet the best humans in the world and put them on this show and have those face-to-face important conversations that make this show as valuable as possible for you. And as I focus on just the podcast and move away from other forms of social media, I'm also going to go back into learning mode, and I will hopefully eventually, in a few years, come back out on social media with a whole new paradigm and way of healing. I think I want to go into a system that I'm trying to create to help people heal their inner child and their inner mother through art. And in order to do that, I need to go study art and art therapy and figure out how to weave herbs into that too. So I'm not done in the health world. I just feel complete in this chapter. And so in the meantime, I want to make sure that I'm still showing up for you guys, and that'll be through the podcast while I go back into internal hermit mode and learn the next modality and the next way that I can show up publicly, personally for you guys. And I hope to be an incredible resource for you guys. I hope to platform the right people that you can be in true relationship with and see one-on-one as a client or a patient so that you can truly heal beyond social media. And for the folks that I bring on the show that aren't practitioners, I hope that they have something incredible to share in terms of their philosophy or the way that they see the world or what they have to teach us so that, again, we can be empowered to make the next best steps in our own personal health journey. So that's where I'm at, having a little bit of an ego death around social media, focusing on what's important, and that feels to me like the podcast. And with that being said, we're kicking off the season with Dr. Alexis Cowan today, who is a PhD in molecular biology from Princeton University. She is a high-performance holistic health mentor with a specialty in metabolic health optimization as well as gut health optimization. And I wanted to have her episode be first in the season because she is someone that I really trust sending people to work with. She does do some one-on-one work, but mostly she does these incredible group programs that help you to understand your metabolic health, that help to increase your scientific literacy and your ability to read scientific studies and understand them in order to make your own best decisions. And she's going to share her journey with us today, how her health journey stems way back to her childhood, and after many years of mold exposure and metabolic hits and chronic illness, being very sick as a child, she ended up dealing with obesity and very poor gut health. She lost 100 pounds, and that was an experience that really opened her eyes to the importance of personal responsibility when it came to reclaiming her health. And unfortunately, after losing the 100 pounds and getting much healthier, she developed very severe IBS. And that is what led her to being this gut health pioneer that has a very refreshing take on how to, quote, heal your gut. She is a true scientist. And I think what sets her apart from other practitioners and what I'm sort of tired of in the gut health world is the kill, kill, kill approach, where I find a lot of people are going to functional practitioners and getting diagnosed with SIBO and doing these intense SIBO protocols, and they help us for a period of time, but then things just continue to go back around or continue to worsen because we're not treating the root, which is cultivating and nurturing an abundant population of beneficial flora. And that is Alexis's approach. She developed her own incredible 3-step gut protocol that does not focus on just killing or what's wrong or getting rid of overgrowths for the rest of our lives. She focuses on targeted nutrients and polyphenols and prebiotics that feed the 3 unique populations of gut bacteria that we need to have a functioning digestive system, immune system, and so much more. She's going to talk about the 3 species of gut microbes that you need to thrive, how to feed them with things like HMOs, red pigments from fruit, and apple peel powder. And she's going to explain how she uses the combination of these things in her gut protocol. She's going to talk about where to start if you suspect you might have IBS or SIBO or fungal overgrowths, and how you might not need the expensive testing that you think you do. We're going to chat about elimination diets and why things like low FODMAP diets are not a root cause solution and should not be prescribed to patients forever, and how to properly get off of elimination diets as you start to incorporate things that feed your good bacteria so that you can reverse food intolerances and eat more food again. She's going to talk about how to get the gut benefits of breastfeeding, even if you weren't breastfed as a child, and how we can rebuild the bifidobacteria that many of us may be missing, which could be a huge missing link in our health. And we're also going to talk about why medical research can be misleading and how the popular narrative around, quote, the science wrongly disregards the N of 1 personal anecdotal lived experience, and why only you know your body best and how to interpret your body's signals and signs that it's sending you instead of just looking to the science and the evidence-based research. She's so balanced in the fact that, of course, she loves science, of course, she loves studies, but she wants you guys to know that your own body is a study and holds so much power, and you have autonomy and your own authority over your body. I'm really excited for us all to learn from Alexis today to understand how to optimize our gut microbiome and how to just simplify things and get away from all of the overly expensive gut testing and fear mongering around things like overgrowths. Because yeah, we got to take care of them, but they're not the end of the world. And the goal is to really grow your good bugs. So this is an excellent episode. Again, Alexis is someone I deeply trust and feel so comfortable recommending as a resource for you guys. And I hope that this season continues to serve as a directory of folks that you can go to for your health so that you have action steps and people that can support you directly. And Alexis is definitely one of those folks. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I hope that as the season goes on, you can really feel the shift in my intentions and the energy that I'm putting into this season, and just the heart that's behind it. I hope it feels back to that season 1 OG vibe. You guys are the best. Please share the show with a friend if you enjoyed. And I'm so excited for a whole new year with you all. Welcome to the show.
How are you going to grow if you don't know where you're growing from?
Whoa.
This is the scientific proof of grace.
That's wild.
What is healthy to you?
I've just moved toward liberation.
Let's get juicy.
It is such an honor to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for coming and making time to chat with us with your vast scientific background and all the cool things you talk about. I just know it's going to be an amazing episode with you.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited. Ever since we met a few weeks ago, I feel like we hit it off immediately. So I know we're going to have a great conversation.
And what's so cool is that you and I hit it off, you know, around like our love for health and wellness and science, but we also really hit it off regarding our love for astrology,
Yep.
which is so rare on the show to meet someone who has such a vast scientific background, but who is also willing to dabble in the woo. Usually when I'm talking to a scientist or a doctor, a PhD, I'm like, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but can you tell me your zodiac chart? And they're like, oh God. But with you, I'm excited to ask this question. Can you sign in and tell us your zodiac signs?
I would love to. So for my big six, I'm a Taurus sun, rising Mercury and Venus, and a Virgo moon. Big Taurus energy over here, very much a homebody. Like I'm happy to be here, but I don't leave my house too often. I work from home and I structure my life in that way so that I can make my space cozy and, you know, kind of make my money from there and live lavishly, cooking a lot of delicious food, eating a lot of delicious food. My moon in Virgo, though, is like, anybody who has a moon in Virgo can attest to like the psychotic nature of it. Because we literally just notice everything.
Yeah.
And it's a gift and a curse. I think in science, it definitely serves me very well because I can notice small details that other people might not pick up. Also, I think that Virgo placements in general, I know you're a Virgo rising, like I think we have a lot of body awareness and like energy sensitivity just to other people in the room and also to our own bodies. Like we can know immediately if something's not right and then like start to navigate it.
What prompted you, being so logical and science minded and having a whole entire PhD from Princeton, what prompted you to go so deep into astrology? Like, what is that pull there that interests you or like helps you to believe in it?
I see it as like collecting data and doing research. So then I see like, oh, well, like I mentioned to you before, I collect Virgo risings. Like including you, I have like 10 people that I absolutely adore, including my partner who's Virgo rising.
That's so funny.
And like I can find patterns between
it's
y'all.
pattern recognition.
Yes,
Yeah, I
that's
think
what
that
it
if you
is.
have a brain that's suited towards pattern recognition, you almost can't help but to be fascinated by astrology.
Like the way that I usually talk about it with people who are skeptical is like, you can think of astrology and like the signs as being archetypes. And like we all have all of the archetypes, but some of them are more prominent than others in our systems, in our lives. So
Yeah.
that's like a really productive way to think about it too. It's just like the different signs have different qualities that go along with them. And some of them are amplified in some people and some of them less so. And like that's kind of just how it seems to be observed over time, like when people were developing these systems.
You have a really interesting story in general, so I'd love for you to just kind of tell us your background on how you became so passionate about this, your own personal health journey, and then what led you to really look into the gut, because you mentioned that you had IBS and whatnot. And
Yes.
So just give us the background.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just to backtrack maybe to my childhood briefly, like I was very sick as a kid, like a lot. So when I was like 2 years old, I had this major dental surgery, and to this day, I still don't know exactly what was wrong with my mouth, but all I remember is like having PTSD for years after that procedure where they basically had my mouth like cranked open mechanically for over 2 hours doing whatever the procedure was. And like, I think I have TMJ literally from like stretching out my ligaments in my jaw from that. So that was like my first really kind of very negative experience within like medicine, you know, dentistry in general. And then I got chronic strep throat in first grade, basically like 6-7 times in a row. And I kept having to get pulled out of school. And so my mom ended up pulling me out and homeschooling me for all of second grade. And during that year, my weight like exploded.
Yeah.
And so when I went back to school in third grade, I was basically like double the weight of my classmates. And then it kind of spiraled from there. And by the time I was like sophomore in high school, I was probably around 270 pounds and kind of just always dealing with some respiratory infections or skin infections or a whole host of things like irregular periods, all the things. So I decided to do something about it. And I basically just kind of did the classical thing, like counting calories and working out really hard. So I would go to the gym every day for like 2 hours, do like an hour of cardio, hour of lifting, and I would eat like 1,500 calories a day. And over the course of about a year and a half, I lost like 90, 100 pounds, something like that. And since then, like I've maintained the weight loss. And I also got super obsessed with like lifting during that period of time too. So I also attribute that to like the sustained weight
That's
loss.
lucky because a lot of
Yeah.
people who start calorie counting or go on a weight loss
Yes.
journey, they don't take muscle into account at all.
Totally.
So you were actually building some lean muscle mass while you were losing weight, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say reflecting back on my childhood and the whole time I was gaining weight, I don't feel like I ate any differently than my peers.
Huh.
I really think it was like my microbiome got super compromised from the extended bouts of antibiotic use
Yes.
in first and second grade. And we know that like even in like livestock cultivation, they use antibiotics to actually make them gain more weight. And we also know now that like early childhood antibiotic use can lead to obesity later in life. So like there's dots being connected now. Yeah. But I never saw myself as having an issue with food or like overeating during that time. It was just like ballooning.
Wow.
So it was really some metabolic thing. And also looking back on it, I was recently talking about this with my partner as well. I think I had really bad mold in my house growing up. And so there's probably some thyroid stuff going on too. I ended up studying biochemistry at school. And also becoming like super addicted to Rockstar energy drinks, like the sugar-free ones. And that's what set off my IBS, actually. I was drinking like 2 per day for like, I don't know, a few months probably. And I started getting like mucus in my stool, blood in my stool, bloating constantly, couldn't eat anything without feeling uncomfortable. Obviously, I cut the drinks out once I realized that, but the symptoms remained. And I ended up going to a doctor and they were like, you know, this is maybe ulcerative colitis, some sort of IBS, something like this. Like we can give you like an immunotherapy, but I mean, that wasn't something that was very interesting to me to like pursue because I had already had the medical system fail me multiple times. Like, so I just, that kind of set me up to not want to go that traditional route. And I just wanted to figure out what it was because I was like, I never had this before. Now it suddenly is appearing. What can I do to potentially reverse this? And also there's now research showing that when you have massive weight loss, that is also setting up your gut to be more permeable and potentially more inflamed. So that also kind of tracks with that time period. And so I ended up doing an elimination diet and I found that dairy was like the major trigger for me. And when I removed it, all my symptoms went away. And they were around for like a year prior to that. So it was like very intense, terrible year of like basically not being able to eat anything without being in massive pain. And so I cut dairy out for actually strictly for 5 years, not even butter. Like I didn't have any. And I was totally fine, like complete remission. And I tried reintroducing it and actually had a pretty strong allergic response to it. I think my immune cells actually got like sensitized to dairy proteins or whatever molecule was reacting. And I was getting like this like whole body tingling heat, like throat closing, like bad news. And that was freaky. So obviously I cut it out again. But then I really wanted to look into this because like obviously dairy is delicious. I don't want to have to restrict myself the rest of my life.
And you ate it before.
Yes.
So it was like, why not try to improve your oral tolerance?
Exactly. So I ended up doing a lot of digging into the microbiome and modulating that. And I came across Joel Green's work at the time. He wrote the immunity code. And that was like really eye-opening into like the functional roles of specific microbes. And how we can leverage those to regain sovereignty over different foods and like just reverse food tolerances and improve other aspects of health too, improve inflammatory status throughout the whole body and like the gut-brain axis and all of that. So I ended up implementing his gut protocol, which is human milk oligosaccharides, which we can get into what each component does, but they're molecules derived from human breast milk. And then red polyphenols, which are from like dark red fruits and berries, and apple peels, which also they have a very specific polyphenol in them that's like specifically targeting Akkermansia, which we'll also talk about like specific bacteria in the gut and why they're important. But I did this gut protocol strictly every morning for like 6 months, and then I reintroduced small amounts of dairy and totally fine. And since then it's been totally fine. And like I don't even do the gut protocol every day anymore. I'll like cycle on and off every couple months. And the results have been like sustained for me. And so that's what really got me interested just through my personal experience. Like there's definitely something here to explore. And since graduating and like starting my business, I've been working with lots of clients and have them on the gut protocol for, you know, a variety of reasons, whether it's like improving immune health or weight loss or improving gut health and digestion and reversing food intolerances. And it's been massively successful. So yeah, it's I definitely think I'm an emerging area, like the world of prebiotics and like targeted prebiotics for specific health outcomes. And it's definitely been the case in my experience that it's quite effective intervention.
But if someone listening does have IBS or does have a long history of digestive issues, where do you sort of suggest that they start? Is it helpful for them to try to identify their root cause and find out if they have SIBO or if there's a certain food trigger, or is it more helpful for them to just kind of go directly into a gut protocol knowing that they're going to need it anyway?
Okay, yeah, great question. So I would say to definitely start by trying to find if there's any trigger foods in the diet or if there's mold in the environment first, because typically, if there's a sensitivity or an allergy, it's going to be an impetus for inflammation. So whenever the gut is inflamed, it actually like begets more inflammation, like in a vicious cycle. And so we actually need to remove the stimulus that's causing that in order to optimize the microbiome, because there's like a complex cascade. But basically the way it works is if you, let's say, take the gut protocol with the HMOs and The reds, specifically the HMOs though, it can cause like pretty intense bloating and gas in people who have inflammation in their gut lining. And so if you jump directly to that, actually I can use that as a reliable marker for whether somebody's gut's inflamed. Like if they take the HMOs and they get super gassy, I know for a fact like they've got inflammation in their gut, because essentially what's happening is HMOs are a really potent food source for this group of bacteria called bifidobacteria. And bifidobacteria make these small molecules that feed other bacteria that create a molecule called butyrate. Butyrate is one of the 3 primary short-chain fatty acids. There's butyrate, propionate, and acetate. Butyrate's the main fuel source for colon cells. But in an inflamed gut, the transport of short-chain fatty acids is inhibited. And so what ends up happening is instead of that butyrate and the other short-chain fatty acids going through the gut lining and nourishing the gut cells and modulating the immune system, they're now getting trapped in the gut lumen because their transport is inhibited. And so that basically creates a buildup of gas because they're gaseous molecules. They're these short-chain fatty acids.
Is that perhaps also why certain people get really gassy and bloated when they start introducing more fibrous foods like beans?
Yep, absolutely.
So if you are someone who introduces HMOs, which we'll talk about in a moment what exactly that is, or more fibrous foods, more legumes, and you immediately respond with gas and discomfort, you can be pretty sure that your gut's inflamed.
Absolutely.
Great test.
Yep.
Easy and cheap.
It's very easy, very cheap. And I think it's a good idea for most people, if they are getting that response, to eliminate those foods temporarily while we kind of tamp down inflammation to the point where we can basically like put a short in that feed forward loop. So typically the approach that I use is like omega-3, high dose omega-3 DHA specifically.
Yep.
And also that's a whole nother conversation because a lot of omegas in the market are coming to the consumer rancid and they're not good quality, and that's actually going to make inflammation worse.
Okay.
So there's a couple different forms and like brands that I recommend, but we can talk about it later.
Yeah, I'm going to make a note of that.
Yeah, so I'll use the omega-3s. I'll use molecular hydrogen. I'll use something called...
And these are all to tamp down gut inflammation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we basically want to acutely, over the course of like 2 weeks, it's usually like a 2-week anti-inflammatory protocol that I'll have people do, and then we'll start titrating in the HMOs very slowly. But there's another molecule called hesperidin, which is a citrus flavonoid. That's also a really potent anti-inflammatory in the colon specifically.
Orange peel tea is my
Yes.
life. I love orange peel tea.
It's amazing. So that's also part of the stack that I use. I'm trying to think if there's anything else other than like moving the like any trigger foods that are identified. That would be important as well.
And you said to reduce foods that are essentially creating more short chain fatty acids, which would include high fiber foods because your bacteria are fermenting those, creating more fatty acids. Does that mean that perhaps for some people in this 2-week period, they would need to actually eat a lower fiber diet before they start upping fiber and HMOs and all these things?
Yeah, that's often the case. Like a quote unquote low FODMAP diet is typically recommended in general, even in the mainstream. But the problem is they don't typically give you an exit strategy for getting off of it. That's
the problem. This is what I want to talk about. Like a lot of times people are told that their IBS is caused by SIBO because they go to a gastroenterologist and they get a breath test done, and it shows that they have an excess of bacteria that produces hydrogen sulfide or methane.
Yeah.
And so then that gastroenterologist tells them that what they need to do for that SIBO and for that IBS is to go on a low FODMAP diet.
All the indigestible carbohydrates that like our bodies can't break down, but that the gut microbiome loves to break down.
Okay. So it's basically a diet that's low in fibrous foods that we rely on our bugs to break down.
Yep.
Great. And so then these people go on the low FODMAP diet, and they're eating a lot less fiber because of it. And so they're also eating a lot less fruits and veggies, a lot less antioxidants, a lot less nutrients.
Yes.
And they're feeling better because they're not eating the foods that these, dysbiotic or like overgrown bugs are fermenting. They're not as uncomfortable because that fermentation is not creating a buildup of gas. And so they're less symptomatic. And so then they feel like they need to stay on a low fiber or a low FODMAP diet forever. But in reality, that low fiber diet is also preventing the growth of good bacteria that they need alongside the bad bacteria. So that's where a lot of people will come to me or will come to a practitioner like you and will say like, what is the exit strategy? What do I do from here? And I think that's where also a lot of people go to diets like the carnivore diet because they're like, oh my God, I feel so good on carnivore. And it's because you're eating no fiber. It's because your gut balance is screwed up. You have too much of the bad guys, too little of the good guys. And so you're not feeding anything really. And you're not having any fermentation or any inflammation. It's a very low inflammatory diet. But in the long run, you're going to lose all of your good guys.
Totally. There's lots of problems with long-term ketogenic and carnivore diets that we should probably talk about. Like I really see the value in them in like the short to medium term for cases just like this, where there's a lot of gut distress. There's maybe inflammatory conditions in general, like autoimmunity. There's like a kind of twofold effect. So one, keto and carnivore can kind of be like very restrictive elimination diets in a lot of ways. People are cutting out all the junk that they were eating, and now they're really simplifying and eating more whole foods. Typically there's like dirty keto too, but typically they're removing a lot of gluten and wheat that can be trigger for a lot of people. And also if they have any intolerances to fibers and they're getting gassy from that, that's also being removed for the most part. Ketogenic diet inhibits that inflammasome that then creates the inflammation. So effectively you're like directly tamping down inflammation through a ketogenic diet. It's like the ketone bodies specifically that are imparting that. So that can also be an ally if you're trying to like acutely get inflammation down. But in the long term, there's a lot of diminishing returns. So like specifically for carnivore diet, when you're eating a lot of protein, basically whatever you eat, your microbiome is eating. And so when the microbiome digests protein, it actually makes the colon very alkaline. And people think alkaline means good, acidic means bad, but this is not the case. Parts of your body that are supposed to have specific pHs, like the blood has a pretty tight pH range around neutral. The colon is supposed to be like around 6.5. It's like slightly acidic. Yeah. And that actually facilitates the growth of these beneficial microbes like Bifido and Akkermansia. When the pH starts to go up, it impairs their growth and their like reproduction. It basically increases the growth of other groups of bacteria called facultative anaerobes that are really good at digesting protein. And what ends up happening is that actually can foment inflammation in the colon because this higher pH environment isn't producing the butyrate because, you know, the bifidobacteria are supporting butyrate production by other microbes. And now you're starving the colon of its favorite food source. It increases gut permeability. It increases translocation of lipopolysaccharide, which is a bacterial endotoxin that can travel to the fat and get stuck in fat tissue where it can foment inflammation and like ultimately can lead to issues with like obesity and weight loss resistance over time. And so if we're eating a lot of protein, like a high protein diet is important in a lot of ways, but if it's not balanced by the right amount of plant foods, then we're going to get these diminishing returns on the microbiome and the gut over time that can lead to issues with inflammation and also like potentially weight loss resistance if that's a goal, if weight loss is a goal, and also just like metabolic dis-ease in some ways.
Is this why when people start on a high protein diet, they get constipated?
I mean, for sure, that's part of the reason, because like fiber can help with gut transit, but also the short chain fatty acid production, which is an important regulator of motility. Like the gut nerves are also getting fed by the microbiome in a lot of ways. And so it's going to change the way those nerves are functioning, which is going to change peristalsis. Wow. Because
a lot of people will tell me, okay, I've upped my protein. I'm doing what I need to do to support my muscle growth and support my metabolism. But I'm feeling so constipated. And perhaps it's because they're just fuller because they're eating a lot more meat. And so they're not maybe eating enough plants or like, you know, carbohydrates to go along with that. So they're not feeding the bifido and keeping the colon in the right pH to where that good bacteria can grow that encourages motility and whatnot. Because I've asked so many different guests that question, like, why, if a higher protein diet is so good for us, which it is, it's good for our muscle tissue and our metabolism, why is it that some people deal with this constipation? Yeah. So perhaps this microbial aspect could be one reason why. And really the thing to do is to balance it with plants. Never get too extreme in any one way. Exactly. I mean, so there is a time and a place for like the extremes, but I think in a very acute sense. Yes. So this is what you're saying. You're like, okay, you know you have a gut issue. You know you have IBS. Maybe you've been told you have SIBO, whatever. You know that there's something going on with your digestion. Yes, you need to do a gut protocol to kind of restore balance to this microbiome. But before doing that, prep your gut with an acute anti-inflammatory diet change, protocol, supplementation, et cetera, to prepare you for the gut protocol. And that could include a 2 or 3 week low FODMAP diet or a 2 or 3 week ketogenic or carnivore diet, whatever that person needs. And it probably does also include cutting out foods that seem to be triggers for you. And you don't have to do it forever, but you do have to do it so that the fiber and the HMOs that you're about to add in can actually be effective and are not creating more inflammation. Correct. Cool. Correct. I love that. Yes. Okay. So we need a strategy. Like ultimately, with whatever we're treating, we need to have a plan to like not create a restrictive lifestyle, which I think has a major toll on like mental health, but also like your social life too, because you want to be able to go out and have fun with friends and not have to worry and stress about what you're eating all the time. So like we always need to have the goal in mind. Like we want to have flexibility with our diet. We want to be able to kind of eat fun foods too sometimes and not have to like reap some terrible ramifications as a result of it. Yeah, I want ice cream. Yeah, exactly. It's a non-negotiable. Okay, when you're working with people, you have them. How long exactly is that acute phase? Is it 2 or 3 weeks before they start the protocol?
Yeah, it can vary depending on how severe somebody's coming to me, but typically it's about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe at most. It can be like 6 to 8 weeks if somebody's having a lot of fungal overgrowth and we need to like tamp that down too.
How do you know if someone's having a lot of fungal overgrowth? Are you a fan of like GI map gut testing? Or?
Yeah, I'm okay with GI map. I think in general testing, I would prefer to go off of symptomology and just like trying things. It ends up being cheaper a lot of the time. I don't want people to have to break the bank to feel well and healthy.
Yeah.
So like testing we can do if somebody has the financial bandwidth for it, but otherwise we can just like try some inexpensive things and just like go off of your symptomology. And so if somebody has mold in their environment, that's usually like tipping me off that they may have some fungal issues.
Yeah.
Also, if they're wearing a CGM or using a finger stick meter, if they have poor blood glucose control, that's also a big warning sign of like fungal issues, because I actually see fungal organisms in a way that I haven't really heard talked about other places, and that is that they're kind of there to save us from getting hurt by excess glucose levels. So like,
yes, I've heard it said before that like the fungus kind of eats the sugar for us. Okay.
Yes. So if we have like crazy high swings in blood sugar, fungal organisms grow because they're feeding off of that sugar. And so in a lot of ways, they're protecting our nerves and our critical structures from being damaged by high glucose levels. But as a result, over time, you know, they can secrete their own toxins and like kind of carve out a niche within the gut and other areas of the body, which can have, you know, adverse effects for us, whether it's like poor digestion or eczema or, you know, anxiety or like flaky scalp, all these different types of things. So we don't want them to be around forever. Obviously, I think it's important though to identify them as like they're actually serving us in the acute sense and to protect us. Yeah.
Yeah. And they also can come along SIBO, right? Like in bacterial overgrowth, like the populations can kind of grow together.
Totally.
Why is that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly known why. I mean, there's certainly some cross-feeding reactions that can probably occur. Like the bacteria can produce molecules that the fungus eat, and the fungus can create molecules that the bacteria eat, and they can probably feed off each other in that way. I think we need to like definitely further characterize, you know, what those interactions look like, but it's certainly clear that they do tend to travel together. Also, parasite infections tend to travel with fungal infections too.
Yes, yeah.
I think it probably over time the fungal organisms can create mycotoxins that can like tamp down immune function, and that creates an environment where the parasites can form a foothold, basically. On the topic of parasites too, I think there's something that we should talk about, and that's that like parasites are everywhere. Like if we're in our natural environment, if we're eating real food, there's going to be parasites that we're encountering. Like there's a lot of like reactionary influencers on Instagram are like showing you under a microscope slide like your meat has parasites or your vegetables have parasites or whatever, but the point isn't actually to avoid the parasites. It's to nourish and support your body in a way where it's like robust against parasite infection.
Yes.
We're going to be encountering parasites. It's just a fact of life. But
on a
whether
daily basis.
Exactly. But whether we get an infection is completely up to our immune system's function. And so that's where we really need to be focusing our energy.
It's a mix of our immune system function as well as like even our own stomach acid production, right?
Yes.
Like our stomach acid can defend us against perhaps parasite eggs that we're ingesting. And that's where traditional herbal therapies like digestive bitters can come in. Just even taking some bitter plants before your meal to encourage proper stomach acid production can help to give you a little bit of a better defense against the parasites that you're exposed to every single day.
Yes, totally. So we have multiple barriers that protect us from infections by invading organisms. So there's the surface barriers, like our skin and our lungs. They also have like pretty strong immune surveillance as well, and the gut as well. Stomach acid is a huge one because that very low pH environment is going to prevent those parasites from surviving that stomach and like traveling to the small intestine where they can get a foothold. So that's super important as well. And that really ties into the whole idea of like stress management, and like stomach acid production and like being parasympathetic are basically like synonymous. And if we can't shift properly into parasympathetic mode because we're upped on stimulants all the time or stressing all the time, like that's going to directly basically increase our susceptibility to getting parasite and fungal infections and like have digestive issues in general.
Yeah, because of the gut permeability aspect and the effects on the nervous system.
Yes, and also digestive efficiency. So the less stomach acid we're producing and the less enzymes we're secreting, the more food we're not digesting. And that basically increases the probability that some food antigen molecules will interact with an immune cell and create an insensitivity or an allergy over time. And so we basically want to make sure we're digesting our food as well as possible in order to inhibit those interactions from happening and setting us up for like developing food intolerances, as an example.
Then you got to do all this to fix your food sensitivities. It's
Exactly.
better to just have a healthy nervous system from jump, produce enough stomach acid, and
do what you can to prevent the gut permeability. But obviously that's not the case for many of us. And this is a great example of why things like childhood trauma can lead to gut issues, because childhood trauma puts you in that chronic state of fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system dominance. And when you're in sympathetic mode all the time, you never get that rest and digest reflex of producing stomach acid. You can really only digest when you're relaxed and produce your stomach acid when you're relaxed. So if you're always stressed and you're like in this kind of like PTSD mode from something that happened in your childhood, your gut is going to suffer. And so as you kind of do these different strategies to, balance your gut microbiome, it's really good to also factor in some healing of childhood wounding and some therapy and EMDR and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can't really have a conversation about physical health without considering mental, emotional, spiritual health. Like, they're all intertwined very intricately, and they can't be separated from one another. And so if you're doing everything right to nourish your body and you're moving your body and you're getting good sleep, but you have, a really toxic relationship that you're in, for example, that's going to be just as harmful to you as versus like you not doing all the other things right. So it's like we need to really consider in a holistic sense, like what are the factors contributing to health and what are the factors contributing to disease, and like try to get rid of the ones that aren't serving us. And a lot of times it can create like pretty difficult situations for people. Like it might mean ending a really long relationship or quitting a job or moving from to a different house that's not one that's full of black mold, for example. It can be expensive. It can be big changes that need to happen. And so I don't take lightly like that healing can be a very like upheaving process, basically.
Yeah. I had a client once when I was in herb school, and I had told her, like, just so you know, when we start using these herbs, like I was using damp draining in Chinese medicine herbs on her, which are essentially like herbs that are going to modulate your gut microbiome and kill off some fungus and some excess bacteria. And I just noticed in people that as they would start taking these damp draining herbs that clear the dampness or the gunk from your gut in Chinese medicine, but also clear the dampness from your mind and your like emotional foresight, I told her, you might feel like you want to up and leave your job. You might feel like you want to up and leave this boyfriend that you've been with for a long time. And she had mentioned specifically that this boyfriend, like, they were very attached. They were very like codependent and kind of damp and sticky. And I realized that for her, that was a relationship that was draining a lot of her energy and her peace and was contributing to her nervous system being dysregulated so that other things couldn't balance. And it turned out that, like once she kind of started on the herbs, like things just start to change. When you change your gut microbiome and you improve things here, and you become healthier physically, you also want to become healthier emotionally, and you realize things about the relationships in your life and where you need to set boundaries. And sometimes it's not always pretty. And vice versa. When you set boundaries in your relationships and all of a sudden become emotionally healthier, you're like, oh crap, like my gut just changed. Everything got better. So it's really an interesting two-way process. They can't be separated.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, okay. So you mentioned going back to like your protocol and the style that you work in. You mentioned doing like anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks of like a prep. This 2 to 8 week period, again, involves removing food triggers. So doing a food diary first, figuring out what is triggering certain symptoms, removing that, whether it's dairy or beans or high FODMAP foods. It involves lowering gut inflammation in other ways through supplementation of things like hesperidin, right? And do you have people take that as a supplement, or is it more of like an orange peel tea? Or
orange peel tea would be fine. I usually get the isolated supplement. It's like 500 milligrams as a powder form, and they can actually add that into like a Red's powder shake. So something worth mentioning is that like a red polyphenols, in addition to being a prebiotic that feeds bifidobacteria and Akkermansia, they're also directly going to be scavenging free radicals. So they're also both anti-inflammatory and like prebiotics for beneficial bacteria. So I really like to use them also in like an anti-inflammatory phase to help support the microbes, but then it's in a more gentle way than the HMOs without overproducing the gases.
Yeah.
And then you're also going to be helping to tamp down inflammation using those. So sometimes I'll have like the people add the hesperidin directly into the Reds shake and have that in the morning. So on like an empty stomach, so it kind of coats the gut.
Okay.
And then doing like high dose omega DHA.
And why is that? Why are high dose omegas so powerful for anti-inflammatory?
EPA is really good for like lipid modulation and like lowering triglycerides, but DHA specifically is the more anti-inflammatory of the omega-3s, and they specifically can modulate immune function essentially to help reduce the inflammatory factors and create more of an anti-inflammatory environment. And so DHA is a great tool for that. There's kind of two brands that I use. So one is from Nootropics Depot. It's like a brand new formulation of like both EPA and DHA. You can get them separately, but they're like complex to L-lysine, which is an essential amino acid. And
Wow.
it's actually lyophilized, so it's like a powder. It's like granules almost. And the way that they make it makes it so that the fatty acids are really stable. And like that's a major problem with omega-3s and like PUFAs in general, is that they're very easily oxidized because they have multiple double bonds. And every time there's a double bond in a fat, it basically makes it more fragile. And so this form is really good because it's kind of protected from that breakdown.
Because of the way that they're making it into the granules?
The granules and like the complex with the L-lysine.
So we said the omega-3s, we said the hesperidin, whether in the hesperidin powder or like an orange peel tea. We said the reds powder. Or
Molecular hydrogen as well.
Molecular hydrogen, eating a lot more red pigmented fruits and veggies. For some people, eating a lower fiber diet during this time. And then are there any other strategies that people can use in this anti-inflammatory phase that are maybe herbal, like mucilaginous herbs that coat the gut, like marshmallow root or slippery elm?
That would be great. I also personally do really well with ginger. I mean, if somebody's running super hot, maybe less so for them. But ginger and me like are best friends.
Same.
I have it like every day.
Would you also have them eat pretty low sugar during this time?
I usually do. I usually basically just have them eating meat and vegetables. Oh, another herbal ally would be garlic. Is very antifungal.
Like, can they do like honey or things like that? Or?
Yes. So I usually do like raw honey, like local if you can, because then you can get some like support in your local environment, like if you're eating local honey versus like imported honey or something.
Okay.
Honey, garlic, both great antifungals.
Great.
And then other than that, doing just eating simply like meat and vegetable, like zucchini or broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and then like ground meat.
Cabbage. Is it even to the point of like lowering sweet potato and banana and high starch fruits and veggies?
I mean, you can also use a CGM to help you in this context, or even a finger stick meter. Like you just want to keep your blood sugar as flat as possible.
Okay, because you know when your blood sugar is going up, also like the fungus is eating.
Yes. I mean, at the very least, we can surmise that most type 2 diabetics will have fungal overgrowth because they have uncontrolled blood sugar.
Yeah.
The organisms are around. They're just going to be, opportunists.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like once they're there, it becomes a two-pronged approach.
Yep.
Lowering dietary like excess carbohydrates and also now having to take care of those populations that are there and doing some cleanup, like some weeding before the feeding.
Exactly.
Okay. So lower sugar diet in the sense that you just want to keep your blood sugar levels stable.
Yep.
So if you can have some fruit and some starch and whatnot, great, have it. But if it's starting to spike you, then don't have it for that time.
Yep. Or you can think about like food combining or like timing to like having a little bit of fruit after a full meal, protein and fat. And
Exactly. Okay, I love that. So not like you're not trying to, again, it's temporary, but
It is
you also
temporary,
don't want to fully restrict yourself. You want to be able to have a little fruit and dessert here and there, as long as it's after a meal, just following blood sugar principles.
Totally.
And then in this 2 to 8 week period, you're essentially getting inflammation down as much as possible. You're taking it really seriously. It's like a marathon for you where you're like, you're dialed in. You're like, I know this isn't forever. I just have to, essentially, quote, eat really clean for this period so that my gut is as least irritated as possible.
Yep.
And then you start this gut protocol, which is what you used for yourself that was developed by, you said Joel Green?
Yep.
Okay. So this involved the HMOs, which you'll like fully go into in a second, the red fruit powder and the apple peel powder. Yep. 3 ingredients that you dose in a very specific way. So I'm gonna let you take it away from here.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the HMOs, just to give a little backstory on them, they're super interesting. They were initially discovered in human breast milk and found to be very bifidogenic, meaning they specifically feed bifidobacteria. And that's to the point where, like, if you look at the infant gut microbiome, it's comprised of over 90% bifidobacteria because the only food source is breast milk at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is a really crucial part in the life cycle of a human. If you're not breastfed as a baby, your risk factors for like asthma, autoimmunity, inflammatory issues in general is way higher. And that's exactly because of this relationship between breast milk and bifidobacteria. Bifidobacteria in a baby gut basically trains the immune system to know which bacteria are good friends and which bacteria shouldn't be there.
Huh.
And so it's basically like this immune tolerance and like training situation where we can then kind of build healthy immune function over time after this initial stimulus of like the bifidobacteria being able to interact with the immune cells, because there's like this very strong interaction between the two. Bifidobacteria create molecules that can directly make immune cells more anti-inflammatory versus inflammatory.
Huh.
But the beauty is, like, even as adults, if we weren't breastfed as kids and we have a lot of inflammatory issues, we can now leverage HMOs because they're on the market more available, like more available now.
Yes.
So
I was going to ask, like,
yeah.
if you're not able to breastfeed, can you actually put some HMOs in your child's formula?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of formula manufacturers do put at least one HMO in now.
Oh, wow.
So there's a few different ones. The primary one is called 2-fucosyl-lactose, or 2FL. That's present in a lot of baby formulas now.
Okay.
If you grew up in the 90s, it wasn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, how recent is this so that we
Probably
can
like
just...
late 2000s or 2010s. It makes you think, like, what don't we know now that in 10 years we're going to look, or 50 years, we're going to look back and be like, what the hell were we doing back then?
Yeah.
Like,
but is it worth it for moms to add like a little bit of an extra scoop to their child's formula? Okay.
Yes, especially because now there's like 5 different HMOs available on the market versus just like the one that most formulas will have. So you can get a more broad spectrum because they each kind of have different affinities for specific subtypes of bifidobacteria. 2FL is like the primary one in breast milk. Importantly, mothers who are FUT2 non-secretors, FUT2 is a gene that creates this glycoprotein that's secreted onto gut cells that actually, if you're a FUT2 non-secretor in general, whether you're a woman or not, you're going to have lower levels of bifidobacteria in your gut naturally because it's actually an endogenously produced food source for bifidobacteria in the gut.
Wow. And what would make us a FUT2 non-secretor?
It's inherited.
Genetics?
It's genetic. Yeah. So it's
is that like
genetic locus.
evolutionary? Did some of us need less bifido?
Yes. So there is apparently a connection between FUT2 status and like your likelihood of developing an infectious gut disease. Like you're less likely to get like viral diarrhea basically, or like some specific infections of the gut if you are a FUT2 non-secretor. So in certain niches, that would be advantageous versus in others. And so for people who are FUT2 non-secretors, it would be super important to optimize your bifidobacteria through diet, and you can use HMOs to help bolster your levels because FUT2 non-secretors are also more likely to develop inflammatory issues because of this deficit.
Is there a way to know if we're a FUT2 non-secretor? Or
yes.
secretor?
So I don't remember the exact locus. There's an RSID. If you have your raw data from like 23andMe or whatever, you can mine it. If you download like the .txt file of the raw data, you can just literally search for that RSID. It's like RS and then some number.
Okay.
Search for that, and then you just look at what 2 letters are there next to that ID, and that will tell you what your genotype is. It's a specific RSID. I wrote a blog on this, so if you want to link it in the bio, people can. At the bottom of the blog, I tell them exactly like what locus to look for and what the genotype should be if you're a secretor versus non-secretor. But importantly, circling back to breast milk, if a woman is a FUT2 non-secretor, her breast milk will lack 2FL, which is the major HMO.
Whoa.
And so their babies are actually going to be compromised. So if you could add more HMOs in exogenously, you know.
So even adding it to breast milk.
Yes.
Regardless of adding
and, like,
HMOs to formula, you would want to also add it to your breast milk if you know you're a non-secretor. Important to know before you get pregnant to look for that RSID and figure out if you need to add extra HMOs to your breast milk.
Exactly.
Okay. So what you're saying is essentially HMOs are so revolutionary because they are already found in breast milk and they are what feed bifidobacteria in infants when we're first born, and that's our sole food source.
Yep.
And a lot of us, because of gut inflammation, because of, gut dysbiosis, stress, artificial sweeteners, all the things that we talked about, for whatever reason, even as adults, we have less bifidobacteria than what is optimal, correct? Yep. So that's why even as adults, adding in these HMOs is the first part of a gut microbiome balancing protocol.
Yes, absolutely. Once you get inflammation tamped down, you can start titrating them in. I use Layer Origin is like a brand, and they have like a super HMO product that has 5 different HMOs, which is amazing because then you can get like that variety to support different niches of bifido.
Okay.
I'll usually have people just start with like a quarter scoop, like a very small amount. It's like a pretty small scoop.
Okay.
Start with a quarter, see how they feel. If they don't get any gas and bloating, they can double that the next day and work up to like 1.5 to 2 scoops every morning.
Wow.
Depending on what they've got going on. Like when I was on it, I used it for 6 months straight, but some people may only need it for a month or 2. In combination with like the reds and the apple peels. And I usually have them just mix all that into like 6 or 8 ounces of water in the morning and drink it on an empty stomach. So it like coats the gut and it can kind of exert its benefits in that way.
And you start from day one with the quarter scoop of HMOs as well as the red fruit powder and the apple peel powder?
Yes. Oh, worth mentioning is that we talked about how the HMOs can cause bloating if somebody has gas.
Yes.
If somebody has fungal issues, I've seen multiple times now that the apple pills can be a problem. It like triggers the fungi, like makes them feel terrible, brain fog, like gut distress. You take the apple pills out and they feel perfectly fine. So there's something with that as well.
For people who do have fungal issues, do you have them wait to add in the apple peel powder or just not add it at all?
So it seems to be kind of a crapshoot as to whether or not somebody's going to react. I don't know the exact variables at play, but I usually have them try it. It's not like so debilitating that they're, going gonna be laid up in bed for days. It's
Yeah.
usually just like some brain fog and gut distress. So I'll usually have them try it. And then if they feel any type of way from that, then I'll have them like just keep it out for the time being, or maybe just remove them in general until we can get the fungal
Can they
infection.
do applesauce instead as like a lesser intervention that's along the same lines?
So I guess it would depend on how the applesauce was made. Like you would
If
have
you're
to have the
making it.
peels.
Yeah, if you can make it with the peels.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know what molecule or molecules are triggering the effects, so it could also be in the applesauce. I know some people who have just issues with apples in general if they have fungal infections as well. The molecule we're really going after is something called cyanidin-3 glucoside. It's a pigment molecule in red apple peels. And that's the molecule that's really benefiting Akkermansia, which we didn't talk about yet, but Akkermansia lives in the gut mucus lining. And it helps to monitor and modulate gut permeability. And so the more Akkermansia, generally speaking, the more your gut barrier has like better integrity. So the lower the permeability. And that can actually help with like maintaining a healthy body weight and blood sugar regulation, because it's actually monitoring how much is being absorbed nutrient wise as well.
See, when I was in herb school, my teachers would always tell us that like the number one food for someone with leaky gut is applesauce made with the peels. They would always tell us that like once you're cooking it and you see that kind of like shiny film appear at the top, like that is like the pectin essentially from the apple, and maybe also like you're getting some of that pigment from the peels, but that kind of shiny molecule is showing you like the pectin is available essentially, and then as you're eating the pectin, it's helping to probably target the bacteria that produce butyrate more than anything, like the pectin, so that you can have more short chain fatty acid production and less colon inflammation and less gut inflammation in general. But good to know about the peels, if you can tolerate them, that it's even like more of a superfood, but still eat your applesauce. It's just like this is kind of like the next nutraceutical level.
Totally, because you're really getting a concentrated dose of that molecule. And Akkermansia is super interesting too, because if you look at the guts of people who are obese or diabetic, they're naturally going to be de-enriched compared to like a healthy, metabolically healthy population. Like you see way more Akkermansia in the metabolically healthy population.
Yeah.
And the research is now coming out too, where if you can restore Akkermansia levels in the metabolically ill, it can improve their blood sugar regulation and help to facilitate weight loss as well.
Okay, so we mentioned 3 key players essentially in our microbiome, which are bifidobacteria, Akkermansia, and butyrate-producing bacteria.
Yep.
You said bifidobacteria is really important because it...
So in early life, it helps to train the immune system on what bacteria are beneficial versus what bacteria need to be kept at lower levels. And then also bifidobacteria creates 2 molecules, acetate and lactate, that go and feed the butyrogenic bacteria, the butyrate producers.
Okay.
And so they're indirectly supporting butyrate production, and they're also modulating the immune system directly through lactate and acetate, but also through other molecules that they're using to basically like tune immune function.
And do bifidobacteria also interplay with our vitamin B metabolism and production?
They can make B vitamins.
Okay.
From like the red polyphenol specifically, they're really good at doing that.
Oh, so it's really because I'm someone who always needs to take a B complex to feel my best, but I always felt like that was because I didn't have enough bifidobacteria to be making. Like I'm like I shouldn't have to take a B complex every day.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, and so it'll be kind of like a lightning round. What can we eat on a daily basis besides HMOs to optimize our bifidobacteria population?
Yeah, so I mean, the low FODMAP diet is basically an example of the diet you wouldn't want to eat if you're trying to optimize bifido. So it's like all the fibrous foods, like the dark fruits, the brassicas, like basically any vegetables with some sort of soluble fibers are going to be benefiting bifidobacteria to a certain extent. The red polyphenols are specifically advantageous for both Akkermansia and bifidobacteria. So
pigmented berries.
Yes,
yeah, when you're
totally.
going for like the supermarket, just getting like those blackberries, blueberries.
Or your purple sweet potatoes too, the ube. They're great. Red cabbage, beets, they're all great.
That's so good to know that the purple sweet potatoes, because I feel like
good.
in my brain, I'm like, oh, the blackberries must have so much more of that juicy pigment.
They're
but
also
actually,
great.
No, it's all throughout that potato.
Totally.
Oh my God, that's so great to know. Okay, so we want to get the colorful fruits and veggies in, especially the deeply pigmented reds and purples. So then Akkermansia, you said, produces the mucus lining of our gut, which is really important to protect our gut from irritation and assaults.
So what they actually do is they eat the mucus, but the eating of the mucus stimulates more to be made. So it ends up thickening the mucus layer as a result, but they actually eat the mucus.
What?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it is
Oh my
cool.
God. Okay. And so you also said that they help to reduce like calorie absorption and sugar absorption. Okay.
Yep.
Which is amazing. So we need Akkermansia for our the health of the mucus that lines the gut, as well as our metabolism in terms of how many calories we absorb from food.
Yep.
So 2 main benefits.
Yep. And like decreasing gut permeability generally.
What can we do to boost our Akkermansia population?
Yep. So that's like the apple peels are like the perfect food for Akkermansia just because of that one specific like C3G molecule. That's going to be a great food source for them.
Okay.
But also exercise and cold exposure increase Akkermansia as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Why exercise?
So it probably has to do with the fact that when you exercise, blood is pulled away from the gut and it's going to the extremities, to the periphery. And when you do that, you're actually changing the substrates that are available for the microbes to consume, because microbes in the gut also consume host factors, not only like what you're eating, but also molecules your body's producing. And so it probably changes the availability of certain nutrients. We also know that lactate produced by muscle during exercise can modulate the microbiome directly as well. So it's probably related to either a host factor that's boosting Akkermansia, or it's related to like a nutrient being removed that's allowing Akkermansia to blossom more as a niche, like, and maybe restricting the growth of another microbe. So I think the jury's still out on the exact mechanism, but it's definitely observed.
Basically, exercise is good for you. Good to know. Is there also like a component of the increased oxygen during exercise?
So, I mean, there's definitely a blood flow component. I don't know about oxygen specifically, but I mean, the gut is becoming more hypoxic during exercise because you're pulling blood away from it and you're putting your blood into your legs and your working muscles, basically.
So you're getting oxygen in other places, but not actually the gut.
Yep. And it's actually a good thing because a healthy gut is actually a hypoxic environment. The hypoxic environment is actually what allows bifidobacteria, Akkermansia, and other obligate anaerobes. Obligate anaerobes basically just means like bacteria that require a low oxygen environment. Those bacteria need that environment to actually thrive. And so an inflamed gut actually has more blood flow because inflammation drives blood flow and heat to the area. And that actually increases oxygen and inhibits their growth.
So should I not be putting a hot water bottle on my stomach every night? Blood flow?
If you're trying to like improve digestion, then like during parasympathetic state, rest and digest, blood flow is going there. So that's a good thing.
Okay, so post meal, because I just find a lot of comfort in a hot water bottle. So I just like to lay there at night and like fall asleep with one. But
that's great at night. Yeah.
Just after dinner, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then butyrate producing bacteria. That is important because butyrate and other short chain fatty acids are immune modulators, right?
Yep, absolutely. Butyrate's the primary, like 90% of the ATP made by colonocytes or colon cells is made from butyrate in a healthy gut. When you restrict butyrate, the colon cells are like basically forced to use glucose more as a substrate. And when they burn more glucose, it actually like increases oxygen and decreases the tight junction proteins that are basically allowing for healthy gut permeability. And so the tight junctions loosen and oxygen levels go up. So that means also that those beneficial microbes are being inhibited once again. And so that kind of creates a feed forward loop.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to encourage butyrate and short chain fatty acid producing bacteria. And do we do that through soluble or insoluble fiber?
So for butyrate, we really want like the red polyphenols, but also the resistant starches, which are found in like beans, but specifically like cooked and cooled beans.
Ooh.
Like something like hummus is perfect for that because there's also a fat in there as well. And like whenever there's fat with starch, it helps to facilitate the formation of resistant starch.
Okay.
You can do the same thing with rice. So like if you cook white rice with like butter or ghee or olive oil and then cool it down, you create a bunch of resistant starch that actually lowers its effects on blood glucose levels after you consume it. But in addition, you're creating a great food source for bifidobacteria and the butyrogenic bacteria to enhance butyrate production.
Would canned beans essentially be cooked and cooled because they are technically cooked first?
Yeah, I would say they would be. The only thing about the canned beans is I really worry about like the BPA and the BPA analogs in canned foods.
Yeah, I know.
And also dried beans are cheaper. Soak them overnight in the fridge. And then I boil them on the stove. But if you have an Instant Pot, you can cook them in that.
So easy.
And it's super easy. Then you can make them in bulk, keep them in the freezer, batch them. Exactly.
And if you're someone who reacts negatively with gas and bloating to chickpeas/chickpea pasta/hummus, you're probably that person, like we said in the beginning, that actually needs to lower their gut inflammation and do a gut protocol.
Totally.
That's a sign.
Yes, that is a sign. There is also like to a certain extent, beans will cause some level of gas in a lot of people. And a lot of times that has to do with their preparation too. Like if you soak beans and boil them, typically you're not going to get as much of a response. There's like lots of different molecules that come out in the soaking process. And traditionally cultures will always soak them before consuming them. And I think that's probably they had some wisdom about the appropriate preparation for having a healthy response.
That must be why chickpea pasta is such a negative player in the game, because they're not prepping it properly at all. They're just processing.
It's a flour.
Because I hear like there's like funny, like people really get terrible flatulence, specifically from chickpea pasta. It's like a trope.
Well, I mean, back in the day, whenever I would eat lentil or chickpea pasta, I would feel like I had a brick in my stomach and I would get constipated. Now I eat it and I'm totally fine. So there's definitely something to like just being able to optimize your microbiome to digest those molecules, and
love it.
then you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so we got colorful fruits and veggies, and just like vegetables in general, and red fruits for bifido. We have the apples, like eating bright red apples for acromantia or apple peel powder. And then we have legumes, beans, other like high soluble fiber foods for our butyrate producing bacteria, especially resistant starch, cooked and cooled rice, hummus, anything that has like a high fiber legume and a fat in there, so that it's nice and balanced.
Also, like cooked and cooled potatoes work too. If you do potato salad, then you get some vinegar, reduces glycemia. Also the fat from like avocado oil mayo, then it's like great. Perfect.
I love potato salad.
Me too.
Oh my God, it's so good.
You have permission to eat all the potato salad.
Okay, amazing. And so then what I really liked is that you said that nowadays you kind of pulse the gut protocol with the HMOs, reds, and apple peel as needed. What does that look like for you? How do you know that you need to pulse it again? How long will you pulse it for?
Yeah, so at this point, I really don't have any gut symptoms at all. So I typically just use it as like a maintenance thing. So I'll usually do a maintenance of like, I'll do a month every 4 or 5 months or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I'm just taking it just to be on the safe side. And
that's good.
It's not going to hurt.
Because I'm always concerned about like gut maintenance, because I see that so many people will treat SIBO a different way than what you're saying, which I also have a question about that. But like they'll treat SIBO with more of like an antimicrobial protocol, whether like an antibiotic or like an herbal protocol. And they'll be like, okay, I feel so much better for like a month, and then my SIBO comes back. So it's like, how do you, is this a different sort of solution where because you're not killing and you're actually just feeding the good guys, that you're kind of guaranteed that the results are going to last a lot longer, and you'll just have to do maintenance of like a refeeding of the protocol every once in a while?
Yeah, so this actually brings up a really important point. For antifungal protocols specifically, I also typically use some herbals.
Okay, good
like
to know.
a blend.
Yeah.
But like I really like to balance like the killing, quote unquote, with the lifestyle and like diet change, because otherwise, like you said, you're not going to get the lasting results. If you just kill everything off, they're just going to grow back if you didn't make any changes in your life to like understand why they were there to begin with.
Yeah.
So we need to combine them together in order to get the lasting results.
I love that. And I do totally agree with you that like the fungal element, because it's so insidious, it does need like actually those antifungals, whether it's even like an increase of garlic or like garlic pills or something like that. But I had used candibactin, AR and BR in my last protocol that I did. And I feel like I made so much progress with like some lingering fungal stuff. But what I do need to do is now feed the good guys. I've never done like I do fiber supplements. Like I rotate inulin and like a psyllium husk, psyllium seed, triphala, cinnamon kind of like powder that I use. And I find, good success with those fibers. They help, but not in the way that like this protocol is going to help. And I actually just think that like a reds powder for me would be a good like daily kind of thing to take. Do you always take your reds?
I don't always take them, but I also think that absolutely. If it's in budget, like somebody could absolutely take them every day. It's basically, I consider like a food. So it's not gonna hurt
if you're not eating your reds, taking your reds consistently after for maintenance would be a good idea.
And also herbs are really good in the antifungal context. So when I was like cooking for my partner, when he was on the antifungal protocol, I was using a lot of like dried oregano, thyme, rosemary, like leverage the amazing plants. They have like so many beneficial compounds for like inhibiting the growth of the bad, like quote unquote bad guys.
Wow, you're just blowing my mind. You're making me want to go home and eat all the fruits and veggies. And I've been eating like a lot of gluten-free cookies lately, just for like a little comfort food moment. But I can tell, Goody Girl. Have you ever had Goody Girl? They make like gluten-free alternatives to Girl Scout cookies. Oh, yeah, no way. Don't even start because it's a problem. No, they have like a Thin Mint alternative.
I love Thin Mint.
No, it's really bad. But they're made with like soy lecithin, and like usually I'm really not a fan of soy lecithin. Like it just, for me, that was always like an IBS trigger, and I just don't want to go back there. So, but yeah, I've been eating more of them than I should. And I'm going to get back on the wagon and really lower some gut inflammation and maybe add in some of these HMOs and whatnot. You've really inspired me.
Before I ask you how we can find you and work with you, I have one last question, which is that if you could empower people with one piece of advice or one personal reflection from your health journey that you think would be very valuable to share with our listeners today, what would that be?
The thing that I've really learned through all of my illnesses throughout life is that they're all really there to be teachers. And it's basically telling you that you're not doing something that's like life affirmative for your body. You're doing something that's going against your body's natural functions. And 90% of the time, if you just stop taking your supplements, stop taking your stimulants, get 8 hours of sleep, get sunlight, get your feet on the, like bare feet on the ground, move your body, and, you know, try to develop some like healthy relationships or repertoire with people that you love, that will solve 90% of your problems. So it's like, although the causes can be multifactorial, the solutions are really just like the basics, nailing the basics. And then over time, that actually gives your body the capacity to heal what's going on, versus if you're just constantly on the go, like revving your system up with stimulants and kind of doing things you know aren't good for you, but you're doing them anyway because you think you need to, you know, meet your objectives, then it's going to take a wear and tear on the body over time. And it's only a matter of time before something comes up to help to remind you, like, hey, this is happening. Like, you need to slow down. You need to pay attention to what's going on inside and like allow your body to come online and like do the thing that it knows how to do, which it can repair and restore itself. It just needs to be given the tools and the environment to do so. People are always looking for, what supplement should I be taking? What should I be doing? But it's really important to also think about what you shouldn't be doing, what you can detract instead of adding, like adding complexity, adding more money to spend, versus like actually taking things away and spending more time on nailing down the basics is going to likely serve you even better.
Yeah.
And it's less expensive too, so it's a win-win.
Sometimes I feel like our drive to overconsume in other areas, like with clothing or whatever, with all the things we overconsume in society, is kind of mirroring this like overdrive, nervous system, fight or flight seeking mission that our bodies are also feeling.
Yes.
And it's like getting all of that noise away, kind of like really simplifying everything in your life to find out what's true and what you really need is such a key for the nervous system.
Practice. Yeah.
It is. It is. And our spiritual health, I really believe, is connected to our gut health and our physical health.
Absolutely.
Do we have any science showing that, or is it really in the early phases?
I mean, Joe Dispenza does great work on like mind-body connections, like how the spiritual, like one's spiritual life can influence their health. And I think, you know, it's hard for science to nail down some of these things sometimes. And sometimes like science just isn't the tool to answer a question. Like, a lot of these things are very personal and like somebody just needs to experience it for themselves. Like, I think we really toss out the value in like research that one individual does.
N
like,
equals one.
Yeah, N equals one.
Yeah.
Like just your direct experience. It's really important. The empirical research is the word I was trying to think of. Empirical research is probably the most important research you can do, because you're literally detecting it with your senses. You know, this is real. This is what's in front of you. This is what you're looking at, versus like extrapolating everything into these huge data sets, looking at the averages of this and that. And it's like, it becomes so complex at some point, but like really, like, does it even apply? Is it even relevant to your actually lived experience?
It is so incredible to hear you give people that kind of permission and to say that, because even for me, like, especially on the show and speaking publicly, sometimes I get afraid to ever kind of like knock or question like the God that is science.
I know.
You know, like this unquestionable force. And it's also because I don't ever want to be dangerous. I don't ever want to encourage people to not seek a scientific answer or see a doctor when appropriate, or treat something that, you know, with an evidence-based approach versus like just doing Reiki and hoping for the best. Not that that can't work for someone, but it's like, I don't ever want to be irresponsible, right?
Totally.
But just you saying sometimes science isn't the right way to answer that question is such a comforting notion, because you're so right. Sometimes you yourself experience that when you are on a spiritual journey and you're, you know, like consuming a lot less and spending more time with nature or animals or creating art, that all of a sudden you see that your digestion improves and your mental health improves and your biomarkers get better. That's your N of one experiment that your spiritual health has actually tangibly improved your physical health. And you don't need a study to show you that that's possible or to make other people believe you. You just need to know that.
Totally. Yes, I totally believe that. And like science is really just the pursuit of understanding the nature of reality. Like we're all scientists if we're like living in our bodies and experiencing the world. There's a really big difference between science and like the science, which is this weird corporate amalgam of just, it's gives me the ick, honestly. Like there's just so much financial interest involved in it too, that it's just very disconcerting to be a part of and to actually like witness the forces that like actually drive specific studies to be done and specific results to be had. That it's just really important. The empirical research, the lived experience is going to be the most important thing for your individual health. Like there's a time and place for science to look at big picture questions that we have, but when it comes to how you're feeling in your body, your empirical research is going to be key.
Please share how we can work with you, how we can read and learn more from you, and your Instagram handle and all that.
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Instagram. I'm not really on Twitter or anything else. I'm at Dr. Alexis Jasmine, Jazmyn on there. And I've taught a couple courses that are available as like evergreen now, so people can go through them at a self-pace. The first one was like a health optimization boot camp where we had different modules. The first one was like all things gut related. Then fat loss, muscle health, performance optimization, and cognition optimization was like the rest of the modules. And that was my first course. The second course was called like the Scientific Literacy Intensive, and that was teaching people how to read scientific papers and like interpret the science for themselves. I'm currently teaching my third course. We just did lesson 1 last week, and the next lesson's coming up. It's called Metabolic Mastery Mentorship, and we're going through basically how to optimize metabolism, and we're going pretty deep on like kind of like a high level, like undergrad/graduate level course on biochemistry and metabolism. So like mitochondrial biology and just the different ways that we can like leverage, dietary inputs, movement inputs, heat, cold, etc., to like optimize our metabolism.
That's another thing we didn't talk about is mitochondria and muscle and exercise. So we'll save that for part 2 as well.
And circadian stuff we need to talk about next time.
Yes, but people should join your metabolic mastery. That's what it's called. People should absolutely join that. And I want to do your health optimization one because I just need a good like reminder. You know, I need a good review.
It was very comprehensive. We went into like all the microbiome stuff and like all of the protocols that you can use to optimize your gut and everything like that. So it's a very actionable one. Like it's less of like big teaching points and more like this is what you can do now to feel better and like moving forward be better.
So I'll link those and then people can also work with you one-on-one, right?
So I'm not currently taking one-on-one, but like
she's booked and busy. I get it.
I would entertain it. So like I have an application, like people can apply if it's like a very serious point or like they've worked with other practitioners and haven't had success. Like I'm willing to be flexible.
You rock.
Yeah. So people can apply. Link in my bio. There's like an application there.
You're going to get flooded. Just letting you know. Because you're amazing. Okay. Wonderful. And then I'll link your website as well and your code for, what's the brand again?
Layer Origin.
Layer Origin. Yeah. So that if people want to look into the gut protocol, they can also check out their products.
That'd be great.
Would it be good for people to just add HMOs like period just to like...
I personally think so because there's a lot of insults in our environment on the microbiome in general, like between antibiotic use, pesticide, herbicide exposure, like our microbiome is really taking a hit and it really is only going to help to optimize it. So I think that's one of the best tools we can use to bolster bifidobacteria, which in turn can then help to shape a healthy microbiome in general because they feed these other important microbes.
Okay. Wow. You are just so full of information and so eloquent, and I love learning from you. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was an honor.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be back on part 2. So I know we'll have another great conversation then.
You're the best. Thank you.
Wasn't that great?